Thank you so much for being here today with us and sharing your experience. Just a few words about you, okay? Andrew Parsons, so he presently heads up the South London Partnerships IoT program, and that will be the subject today. David Grasty is corporate head of digital strategy and portfolio for the Royal Boroughs of Kingston upon Thames and the London Boroughs of Sutton. And Rob Worsley, you will love him because he's speaking French. So if you have questions in English, it's great, but if you have questions in French, it's okay also. Rob is the head of data and analytics at Hitachi Solutions Europe. Over to you.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Oui, je parle bien français, donc si vous avez des questions, n'hésitez pas à la fin de me poser en français. Now we're going to switch over to English, though. I think we've done the introduction, so we can probably skip over this bit. What we want to get to is really the heart of the subject, which is the South London Partnership project that we have done collaboratively with together, Hitachi Solutions and the South London Partnership team. So maybe, David, I think I'd like to hand over to you to give us an overview of the project, what it's about, in your own words, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the South London Partnership is a regional body within London of 5 boroughs. That's Kingston, Sutton, Croydon, Merton and Richmond. And back in 2019, we received a grant of £4 million to undertake IoT trials within our boroughs within London. And specifically, that was for IoT trials that were resident-focused and looking at growth in the economy initially. But almost immediately after we had received the money, obviously COVID happened. So we expanded the project then to look at trials that would help our COVID response. And shortly after that, we've expanded the project again to look at the climate emergency and projects that would help us deal with climate change. Thank you. So there are underlying principles of all the projects within our program that we set up. Every project has to conform to these principles. And when the projects come along, the first things that we're asking is, what data will you be storing? How will you inform the public what data that you're storing? How will you ensure that it's secure and private? What data will you be sharing wider with outside bodies? Now, we aim within the project to share data where it's in the public good, but there is a blanket ban on us commercializing that data or selling it. And how you ensure that the partners that we're going to work with on your project are sharing these principles and will conform to them. Now, if you can go on to the next slide. This project is a data project. It's not a technology project. And IoT in itself, at its heart, is about data. It's about collecting data. And one of the principles that wasn't on the previous slide that we apply to all of our projects is that we must be led by a problem. So the way that we have decided how we're spending the money is each of the boroughs have put forward their proposals for particular projects. That goes to the project team, and the project team assess them against the principles of the project, and the ones that pass go forward to a project board who decides who gets the money. Now, these are some of the evaluation criteria that we use in deciding who gets the money. The primary one, as I said before, is there must be a real-world problem. So an example is how do we protect our empty properties from being vandalized and stuff being stolen from them. The next level that we ask for is what specific data do you need to help solve that problem? So in that particular example, the service wanted alerts to come from the property to say that there was unauthorized activity happening within that property so that somebody could go and see and check it out. The next thing that we ask for in the proposal is how are they complying with the principles of the project? And if they're not complying with the principles, so for example, We are storing they wanted to store personal data. Why did they want to do that? What data were they storing? And how were they going to communicate to the data owners what they were going to use that data for? And the final one, which is perhaps the most important one, is there an internal champion within the service that will own that project? What we didn't want was the IT department suggesting projects that they thought was worthwhile, that sounded good, that was cool from a technology perspective, but the actual people that had the problem didn't support, and therefore we'd be putting in a project that would produce data that nobody used. So we've gone through that process, and we had over 140 project proposals from the 5 boroughs, of which 43 now, I think, have gone through and are live. And I'll hand you over to Andrew, who's going to talk to you about what those projects are.
Thank you, David. So yeah, as David just said, we've got 45 live use cases at the moment, and they cover all the areas outlined above, but we've kind of grouped them into residents, the environment, obviously what could be potentially the climate agenda, and economic. And just to give you a flavour, so from running a tender to full deployment and live service is about 2 to 4 months. It slightly depends. Obviously, supply chain issues at the moment are one of the big problems. And our average cost of a trial is around £20,000, so about 24,000 euros at the moment. And the biggest thing is actually, and you probably come from different organisations or different departments, is actually the overlap between you is really common. We've got 5 boroughs, 5 very different economic, population, societally, but actually the problem's very similar. And actually that's one of the really big things that's happened. We also talk on the slide about connectivity. We're blessed in large parts of the UK actually with something called NB-IoT, and it allows us to deploy sensors incredibly quickly without having to worry about the backhaul network. So it's been really useful for us because it particularly works in concrete buildings with steel, it works underground. And like I say, we are now, well, we believe we've got around 2,900 sensors across 5 boroughs. So it gives you an idea of the scale we're working at. Next slide, please, Rob. And if I go into specifics, and they will translate over here, we are in Paris today. You've got building works just outside the front door. We monitor some of our construction sites. Are the vehicles idling outside before it opens? What's the air quality like? Are they finishing at times? Are you causing traffic jams? All of that, you're nodding and smiling. And the answer is we know in Paris because it's clearly chaos with your new tram system, okay? But if you live nearby or you were this conference centre, you might want that facts, you might want that data. It's really useful to have the discussions. And some of this we're using for enforcement purposes, but some of it's education. We can actually educate the public that at times it isn't the businesses being bad businesses, it's another event that's occurring. The other one, and today's been an example, it's been raining on and off. Just like in Paris, we have underpasses, it's literally just to the other side of us here, and we suffer with them flooding at times. And so one of the things we do now, we monitor our known flood hotspots. And we have rainfall forecasts, we have the known capacity in the culvert, we know what it's running at, and we can predict when we'll have flooding. And so one of the things we're now getting to, and my colleague used a really good word the other week, he said we have calmness when it rains now. Historically, they always used to just jump in their cars, drive around the borough, check what was happening, or wait for someone to shout on Twitter or a different feed. We actually know in advance, are we going to have a problem? Shall we send a highway crew out? Shall we take action? On vulnerable residents, we actually have the data for last Christmas. We know 30% of our vulnerable residents were in fuel poverty last Christmas before we've had the recent energy rises. I know in France you've had a slightly lower number, in the UK it's a lot more. But again, it's very worrying for the winter and we're wanting to monitor this. But if you look at the examples there, and going back to what David said, focus on the fact everything's a problem. We're trying to understand something. We're trying to get data. We're trying to then make informed decisions. And in some cases, what we're doing is we've put an intervention in, and we want to see what the outcome is. Next slide, please, Rob.
So both David and Andrew have talked about the project being a data problem and not a technology problem. That's certainly the case, and that's what we've been helping as Hitachi Solutions. We've been helping the South London Partnership deliver the data platform that underpins a lot of the projects that they were talking about. So it's built based on a reference architecture, so things that can be scaled out much more easily on the Microsoft Azure cloud that meets all of the security requirements of the UK government, and allows that platform to use this kind of standard reference architecture that makes it more easily repeatable. It's compartmentalized, so you've got the different components that are needed to connect the data, manage the devices, processing the actions, layer on top the analytics that is required to deliver some of the use cases that Andrew and David were talking about, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail about that later on to illustrate that. And it kind of meets all the objectives really they were looking for in a platform that's secure and easily governed and has that kind of ability to, it doesn't actually use proprietary code or license requirements. Everything is kind of built on open standard principles that allows all the analytics and all the insights to be built on based on this single platform. And the platform is probably like one of the most important words. It's a foundation that allows you to not have silos of projects doing different things in different ways. It's a single platform that allows you to consolidate all these different sources of information that are coming from the sensors that are installed around the different boroughs in South London. And then really enables and facilitates these different use cases because you've got that kind of shared understanding of the data and the kind of it's mutualized use of these different resources on the Microsoft Azure cloud. So we just wanted to give you like a little bit of a flavor of what some of the insights look like. So this is obviously the visualization layer of the platform that I just described briefly, and one of the first projects we wanted to describe was the cycling insights. So we've got a short video that's going to run in the background. We're not going to describe the video. We're more going to talk about what the data allows you to do and visualize. And I'm going to ask Andrew to give a quick summary of what it really enables them to do. Once you've connected those sensors, Andrew, and you've got the data coming into the platform, you can get these visualizations quite quickly. But what does it allow you to do?
So thank you. So the key is it allows you to have facts on what you're looking at. So you're seeing something playing that shows when the cyclists go across the borough, peak times. So what you're able to do is work out what your capacity needs are. So if you're planning, how much cycle space capacity do you need? What storage space do you need? When do you need it? So all of this is what you can start to do. And you can also, if you expand your network, start to see, do people go there or do you grow their overarching number of cyclists?
And there's a second use case which is going to look quite similar. So we've got it makes it easier to understand and interpret the data when the visualizations are in a similar and easily understandable way. And then this use case is more focusing on air quality, again coming from sensors that are installed around the different boroughs, and it allows you to select individual sensors and then analyze that at a more localized level. But again, Andrew, what does that really allow you in the boroughs to do?
So I know Paris has introduced its restriction on certain vehicles, so's London. This is allowing you to truly see what the air quality is like. And what we tend to do, just to be honest, you ignore the absolute peaks and the lowness. What you look for is averages. And what we're able to do here again is see, as a borough and collectively boroughs, are we compliant with World Health Organization's air quality levels? So yes, no, fact. Also, if there are reports of pollution spikes, can we track them back? What we can also add here is we've got road traffic data, so we can actually see if there's roadworks appeared. So I know we all joked about what's happening outside, but we could actually see, is that creating air pollution? So again, what we can get here is the absolute facts. And what we've done in parts of London is change the class of vehicles. So HGVs, for example, may not be allowed on a certain street. Can you see, does that make a difference to nitrogen dioxide? So, as Rob said, what we get here is an ability to look at facts, and you slice that up, depends on what you need. The sustainability team have a very different need than highways, and that's what you do with this platform. You can look for what your requirements are, respond to the public, and answer councillors' questions if needs be.
So I guess the question that comes next, Andrew, is so what's next? So this has just been a snapshot. Yeah, the slides have gone on. Okay. So this has just been a snapshot of what we've done with the South London Partnership, and there's a whole load of other things that we mentioned, and we talked about it over dinner last night. And it's and if you want to come and get a bit more information about these different topics, then we'll be available after the presentation. So what's next, Andrew, for the project?
So really two kind of primary focuses. The first one, at the moment, we generate data. You look at it and you gain an insight. We want to move to an action. So going back to it's raining hard, it may flood. We actually want to work out the probability and send out so that in our case, the council, your case, a department, proactively informs the public not to go that way. We can send a crew out, we can clean the gullies, we can even close the road. The other one, and what you're seeing here, is something called a theograph. So I won't go into detail, but a theograph is a potential way of showing a vulnerable resident's decline. And what you're seeing pictorially there is data being brought in from many sources. And the idea in this example is the resident is well, a number of events start to occur, and the big long red line at the top is a stay in hospital. And what we're trying to work out is, can things like a smoke alarm going off, a number of floods, a report of concern, if you put that data together collectively, do you gain something that you don't necessarily know? The maintenance man may not know there's been a fall. Equally, they may not know the smoke alarm's gone off. But if you put it together and you have the right people looking at this data, you hopefully can step in this case it's vulnerable residents, and take an action before there is a serious fall or decline in that person's health. So that's what we're trying to do, is move to outputs rather than just data. Data was a stepping stone to the next piece.
And I think our audience are really going to want to hear as well what the kind of tangible outcomes have been in this platform. I've been really amazed talking to David and Andrew over the last couple of days about some of the real things that they've been able to change and impact in their local communities. Do you want to just give us a few examples of that?
So thank you. So the lady you're seeing there, she is real. She's one of our residents. She's a lady called Maureen. Coldest night of the year, this year, February. She fell over. She broke her hip. She was lying on the floor. The next morning, the sensors alerted. Action was taken. Paramedics called, responded. They picked her up, were taking her to hospital. As they left, they issued the immortal words, she would have probably died 2 hours later. That lady was not due a visit from anyone else for 3 days' time. So that's the impact that a very small, cheap sensor can have in terms of giving you an insight without being disruptive. And in the case of Maureen, there's 3 other people, all of whom are alive today because. We've also obviously helped with the wider climate agendas in terms of air quality, but we talked about flooding, and you'll be able to relate to just literally probably the other side of this road. That's a real picture of literally a metre and a bit of water and the chaos it caused. We now monitor that area, and we've prevented repeats of those. That's what we're talking about when you're talking about sensors that are, on the far right-hand one, roughly £1,000 a year. You're not talking a lot of money. Okay.
And then maybe just to conclude on the learnings, are there some kind of key learnings that you want to share with us? We've got about a minute and 15 seconds remaining for you to share the key learnings, Andrew.
Yes, or maybe you can take some questions in the public. Yes, maybe some
No problem at all, either way.
Yes. Do you have any question before the end? Yes, for our speakers. Thank you. So some mic, please.
So just while the mic's being obtained, what I will just say in terms of learnings, think about privacy. Make sure you collect the least data you can possibly get. And then the other one is start with a real problem. Whatever the biggest problems you can get people to suggest is probably your quickest win, because they care about them, they'll be passionate, and they'll remain engaged with you. Sorry, the question.
Yes. Eric for Cuno, Paris Mutuel Urbain. I have one obvious question. Why only 5 boroughs, and do you plan to expand?
It's a great question. So the South London Partnership happens to only be 5 boroughs. Within London, there's natural groupings, and that just happens to be South West London. In terms of the expansion, between David and I, we've met 47 other local authorities now in the UK, all of whom are on different journeys and slightly behind us. But as of literally last week, there was another partner in Birmingham signed up to the platform, and I'm led to believe 2 other boroughs in London are about to sign up. So the answer is yes, it's gaining momentum, but it probably took our seed funding and us pushing such scale to make this happen.
Just next to you. Okay.
Sorry. Frédéric Bron, Constellium. I'd like to know about your IoT sensors. What kind of sensors? How do you send the data? How do you get it?
Okay. The simple answer is there isn't one sensor. I've referenced it there on the bottom on the slide. We use a framework. So we've run a tender to literally define our problem and bidders respond with their solution. That's worked for us incredibly well. In terms of connectivity, I referenced it before, but we use something called MB IoT. It's ubiquitous. It's all over most of the UK. I'm probably sure it's over here in France. And 5G and 4G works as well. They are more sensitive to your building types. So you may well be aware of LoRaWAN. LoRaWAN is deployed in other places. Like I say, in the larger cities, you don't tend to need to do it. MBIoT covers it for you.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, just to sort of answer, because of the different use cases, I think we have 16 different suppliers. And it depends on what the use case is, what the sensor is that we've deployed. So in the likes of the vulnerable resident that we were talking about, it's a sensor from IoT systems that just measures the humidity and temperature in the resident's kitchen. It sends that data back to an AI that then looks for patterns in that resident's use of their kitchen. So humidity is, being British, it's a classic thing for somebody making a cup of tea. So we effectively are monitoring how often somebody makes a cup of tea in our kitchen. And if they're making it less, then it gives us an amber alert. If they stop making it at all, then it gives us a red alert, which is what happened in Maureen's case. So it doesn't rely on the individual actually pushing a button or trying to summon help themselves. It's monitoring the activity in that sense. In some of our other examples, we've got HD cameras that are out on lampposts monitoring for where we suspect people are illegally dumping rubbish on the side of the road. That is using an HD camera with 5G connection that sends the image back to an AI that looks for rubbish appearing on the road. So there's nobody monitoring these cameras 24 hours. An AI is monitoring them. If it sees a change in the picture that looks like rubbish is there, it then alerts our enforcement team to review that particular element of the film to say, yes, that is somebody dumping rubbish, and then we take it. So there's a whole range of different sensors that we use depending on what we need to gather in terms of data.
Just a very last and quick question.
Yeah, my question was, you have a lot of data and a very interesting platform, and do you plan in future to have additional services to open it to some ecosystem, to some partners who can provide more for your citizen?
Very quickly, please.
The simple answer is yes. We get data from other sources and we can take other sources in. It would just depend on a case-by-case basis. Because if I go back to the one point we've touched upon, we don't want data we don't need, because we have a problem. So we have to be very careful what we take.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.